Mayday, Mayday. This is Dr. Anna Eriksson calling from Bouvet Island Weather Station, day 127 of my third decade here. The voice from the radio was mine, unmistakably mine, but older, weathered, desperate in a way that made my skin crawl with recognition I couldn't name. I had arrived on Bouvet Island exactly 127 days ago to maintain the emergency beacon for what was supposed to be a 4-month rotation. I was Dr. Anna Eriksson. But the voice continuing from the radio speakers knew things about me that I had never told anyone. If you're receiving this transmission, you are me, and you arrived on the island exactly 127 days ago. You think this is your first time here. You think you came to maintain the emergency beacon for a routine rotation. You're wrong. I stood frozen in the communications room of the weather station, watching snow fall past the window in patterns that suddenly seemed too familiar, too precisely repeated. The storm outside was the same storm that had been building for the past 3 days. Or was it? Time felt strange on Bouvet Island. The endless Antarctic night, the isolation, the way the wind seemed to carry voices when no one else was there. You've been here 30 years. You've lived these same 127 days 89 times. You never age. You never leave. The island won't let you. My hands shook as I adjusted the radio frequency, but the transmission continued on all bands, as if it were being broadcast from the equipment itself rather than received from elsewhere. The voice, my voice, continued with desperate precision. The helicopter that dropped you off crashed into the ocean 3 minutes after takeoff. You can still see the wreckage if you look northwest from the beacon tower. There was never any backup plan. No rescue coming, no supply drops, no rotation schedule. I looked toward the northwest window, though I couldn't see the beacon tower from here. But I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach drop, that if I climbed the tower and looked northwest, I would see helicopter wreckage on the rocks below. I had never looked in that direction, had never thought to check, but I knew it was there. You're trapped in a temporal loop, Anna, and I'm you, 30 years from now, still living the same 4 months, still trying to warn my younger self, still hoping this time will be different. But it won't be. Day 127 always ends the same way. The transmission crackled with static, but underneath I could hear something else. Wind. The same wind that was howling around my station right now. The broadcast wasn't coming from the past or future. It was coming from now, from someone experiencing the same storm at the same moment. Check your journal, check the date, then look at the calendar on the wall and start counting backwards. You've been writing the same entries for 3 decades. I walked to my desk with legs that felt disconnected from my body. My journal lay open to today's entry, day 127, as always. I flipped back through the pages. Day 126, day 125, day 124. All in my handwriting, all describing the same routine of weather measurements, equipment maintenance, radio checks. But as I looked closer, the handwriting changed. Subtle variations in pen pressure, slight differences in letter formation, as if different versions of me had written these entries. I flipped to the very first page. Day 1, my arrival on Bouvet Island. The date at the top of the page was March 15th, 1994. Today was March 15th, 2024. But that was impossible. I was 32 years old. I had been born in 1992. In 1994, I would have been 2 years old. The radio crackled again. You found the date, didn't you? March 15th, 1994. You've been wondering about that date since you first opened the journal. But you've been telling yourself it's a mistake. It's not a mistake, Anna. You've been writing in that journal for 30 years, and every 127 days, you forget and start over. I turned to the wall calendar, one of those old perpetual ones that could be adjusted for any month and year. It was set to March 1994. I had assumed it was left over from a previous occupant, but the handwriting on various dates, the small notes about weather patterns and equipment schedules, were all mine. Look at the supply inventory. Check the food stores. You've been eating the same supplies for 3 decades, but they never diminish. Time doesn't work properly here, Anna. Cause and effect follow different rules. I stumbled to the supply closet, knowing what I would find, but hoping desperately that I wouldn't. The shelves were fully stocked. Canned goods, dried foods, emergency rations. Enough for exactly 127 days. I grabbed a can of soup, something I had eaten yesterday, and checked the inventory list tacked to the inside of the door. The can was marked off as consumed on day 126, but here it was, back on the shelf, as if I had never eaten it. The radio transmission continued, my older self speaking with the patience of someone who had explained this many times before. The loop resets every 127 days, Anna. You wake up on day 1 with no memory of the previous iterations. You live through the same 4 months, make the same observations, write the same journal entries, follow the same routines. On day 127, something happens. You'll discover what tonight, and the loop begins again. I sank into a chair, trying to process what I was hearing. Time loops were science fiction. Temporal anomalies didn't exist. But the evidence was overwhelming. The journal entries in slightly different handwriting, the calendar set to 1994, the supplies that replenish themselves, the perfect repetition of weather patterns. How many times? I whispered to the radio. As if she had heard me, the older Anna answered, 89 complete loops. I remember fragments of each one. The memory accumulates slowly, layer by layer. By the 15th loop, you start to notice the repetitions. By the 30th, you realize what's happening. By the 60th, you're trying to break the pattern. I'm on loop 89, and I've accepted that there's no escape. But why? I asked, though I knew she couldn't hear me across whatever temporal barrier separated us. Why is this happening? The transmission continued as if answering my question. Bouvet Island sits on a temporal anomaly. The isolation, the magnetic fields, the unique geological properties. They create a pocket of space-time that doesn't follow normal rules. Every person sent here becomes trapped. I've found evidence of previous occupants, Anna. Meteorologists, radio operators, research scientists, all trapped in their own loops, all living the same experiences over and over. I walked to the window and stared out at the Antarctic landscape. Bouvet Island was the most remote inhabited place on Earth, 1,400 miles from the nearest land, accessible only by helicopter or ship during brief weather windows. If something supernatural was going to happen anywhere, it would happen here, in a place so isolated that reality itself might function differently. You're going to try to escape, the older Anna said. Every loop, you try something different. You'll attempt to radio for help, but the transmission never reaches anyone except other versions of yourself. You'll try to leave the station, but the island won't let you get more than a few hundred meters from the weather station. You'll try to stay awake past day 127, but something always happens at 11:47 p.m. that ends the loop. 11:47 p.m. I looked at my watch. It was currently 3:22 p.m. on day 127. 8 hours and 25 minutes until... What? What happened at 11:47 p.m.? What happens at 11:47? I said to the radio. The transmission paused for a long moment, filled only with the sound of wind that perfectly matched the wind outside my station. When my older self spoke again, her voice was softer, sadder. You'll see. You always see. And then you forget. and we start over. I'm sorry, Anna. I'm sorry for what you're going to experience, and I'm sorry that I can't save you from it. But maybe this time will be different. Maybe if I warn you early enough, clearly enough, you can find a way to break the pattern. The transmission began to fade, but I could still hear my older self speaking. Look for the equipment cache beneath the station. Previous versions of yourself have been leaving supplies, weapons, tools. Maybe one of the Annas before you found a way out. Maybe the answer is there. The radio fell silent. I sat in the communications room as the Antarctic wind howled around the station, trying to accept an impossible truth. I was trapped in a temporal loop on the most remote island on Earth, reliving the same 127 days for the 89th time. And I had been here for 30 years without aging a single day. But if my older self was right, I had 8 hours to find a way to break the pattern. 8 hours to do something different, something that might free me from this endless repetition. I stood up and walked toward the supply closet, looking for the entrance to whatever lay beneath the weather station. If previous versions of myself had been preparing for this moment, if they had been leaving tools and weapons and supplies, then maybe, just maybe, this could be the loop where everything changed. Outside, the storm continued in its perfect, predictable pattern, and the island waited to see what Anna Eriksson, number 89, would do differently from all the Annas who had come before. I found the entrance behind a false panel in the supply closet, a trapdoor that led down into a space that shouldn't have existed beneath the prefabricated weather station. The ladder descended into darkness, and when I reached the bottom, I found myself in a chamber carved directly from the volcanic rock of Bouvet Island. The space was larger than the station above, filled with equipment that spanned decades of technological development. Modern GPS devices sat next to analog radio equipment from the 1980s. Satellite phones were stacked beside telegraph keys, and everywhere, scattered across makeshift tables and tacked to the rock walls, were notes in my handwriting, dozens of versions of my handwriting. I approached the nearest table and found what looked like a research log filled with observations about the temporal loop. Loop 23 attempted to destroy the beacon tower. Loop reset normally at 11:47 p.m. Tower was intact on day 1 of loop 24. Loop 31 tried to leave island via emergency raft. Raft disappeared after 200 meters. Found myself back at station at 11:47 p.m. Loop 45 stayed awake for 72 hours leading up to reset. At 11:47 p.m, experienced sudden unconsciousness. Woke on day 1 of loop 46. Loop 67 discovered temporal shielding properties of volcanic rock. Built underground chamber. Equipment stored here persists between loops. The notes continued for pages, documenting failed escape attempts, scientific observations, and growing desperation. But at the bottom of the most recent entry, I found something different. Loop 88 made contact with Temporal Research Division. They know about Bouvet Island. They know about the loop. Help is coming. Anna 88. Temporal Research Division. I had never heard of such an organization, but if previous versions of myself had made contact with some kind of research group, if help was actually coming, I searched through the equipment until I found a satellite phone that looked more advanced than anything I recognized. The display showed it was connected to a network I'd never seen before, TRD Temporal 1. There were several messages in the inbox. Message 1. Dr. Eriksson, this is Dr. Martinez from TRD. We've received your transmission. Temporal extraction team is being prepared. Message 2. Anna, extraction window is day 127, 11:47 p.m. You must be in the underground chamber. Do not be in the station when the reset occurs. Message 3. Final message. Temporal anchor device is in the chamber. Activate it at 11:46 p.m. It will hold your consciousness through the reset. This is your only chance. I looked around the chamber frantically until I found a device that didn't match any of the other equipment. A small metal box covered in warning labels and connected to what looked like a miniature particle accelerator. The temporal anchor device. According to the instructions attached to it, the device would maintain my consciousness and memory through the temporal reset, allowing me to retain my experiences when the loop began again. But it came with warnings. The process was experimental, potentially dangerous, and had never been successfully tested. I checked my watch. 6:15 p.m., 5.5 hours until 11:47. I spent the remaining time studying the previous Anna's research, trying to understand what had happened to me and why. The notes painted a picture of a natural temporal anomaly created by Bouvet Island's unique magnetic properties and geological composition. The island existed in a pocket of space-time that repeated itself every 127 days, trapping anyone who stayed longer than the reset period. But the research also suggested that the loop wasn't random. Someone or something had created it deliberately, using the island's natural properties as a foundation. The weather station itself seemed to be part of the mechanism, positioned at the exact center of the temporal field, designed to house whoever was being trapped. At 11:30 p.m., I positioned myself in the underground chamber with the temporal anchor device. According to Anna 88's notes, the device would keep my consciousness active during the reset, allowing me to experience the moment when time looped back to day one. At 11:45, I activated the device. The world immediately felt different, heavier, as if I were moving through water instead of air. The temporal anchor hummed with energy that I could feel in my bones. At 11:46, I watched my watch tick toward the moment that had ended 88 previous versions of my life. At 11:47 p.m., exactly, reality folded. I felt myself stretched across time, experiencing every moment of the past 127 days simultaneously. I could see all 89 loops overlapping, like transparent images layered one on top of another. I saw myself arriving on the island again and again, living through the same experiences, making the same discoveries, failing in the same ways. But this time, I remained conscious. This time, I could see the mechanism. The weather station above me began to glow with energy that wasn't electromagnetic or thermal, but something else entirely, temporal energy, the raw material of causality itself. The entire island pulsed with it. And I realized that Bouvet Island wasn't just experiencing a temporal anomaly. Bouvet Island was a temporal research facility. The weather station, the beacon, the entire setup, it was all designed to study human consciousness under temporal stress. I wasn't trapped by accident. I was a test subject. And as the loop reset around me, as I felt myself being pulled back to day one for the 90th time, I saw figures in the distance. People in protective suits, watching the station through instruments I couldn't identify. Researchers, scientists, the people who had put me here. The temporal anchor device failed at the last moment, its experimental systems overloaded by the force of the reset. I felt my enhanced consciousness fragmenting, breaking apart into the familiar pattern of forgetting. But this time, just before the memories faded, I managed to do something that none of the previous Annas had accomplished. I sent a message. Using the station's emergency beacon, I broadcast a signal on every frequency containing everything I had learned about the temporal loop, the research facility, and the people who were using me as a test subject. I transmitted it with the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, would receive it and understand what was happening on Bouvet Island. Then the reset completed, and I forgot everything once again. Dr. Anna Erickson woke up on day 1 of her assignment to Bouvet Island weather station with no memory of the previous 89 times she had lived through this moment. She stretched, checked her equipment, and began her routine of weather observations and beacon maintenance. But 1,400 miles away, at the Temporal Research Division's Antarctic Monitoring Station, Dr. Sarah Martinez received an emergency transmission that changed everything. This is Anna Erickson. Loop 90. To anyone receiving this signal, I'm trapped in a temporal facility disguised as a weather station. The people running this experiment can hear this message. I know you're watching. I know you reset my memory every 127 days. I know you've been studying my psychological responses to temporal imprisonment for 30 years. Dr. Martinez grabbed her supervisor immediately. The transmission continued. The temporal anchor failed, but it worked long enough for me to see the truth. Bouvet Island is a research facility. The isolation, the temporal anomaly, the weather station, it's all designed to study human consciousness under extreme temporal stress. I'm not here by accident. I'm a test subject. And you've been watching me break down and rebuild my sanity 90 times. The transmission was being received on emergency frequencies across the Antarctic Research Network. It couldn't be covered up or classified. Anna had found a way to expose the experiment to the entire scientific community. If you're receiving this message and you're not part of the Temporal Research Division, please help me. Please investigate Bouvet Island. Please don't let them reset my memory again. I've been 32 years old for 30 years, and I'm tired of forgetting who I am. Dr. Martinez looked at her supervisor, Dr. James Chen, who had gone pale. Sarah, he said quietly, we need to abort the experiment. Now. What experiment? Dr. Martinez asked. What is she talking about? Dr. Chen closed his eyes. The Bouvet Temporal Psychology Study. We've been monitoring a test subject's responses to memory loss and temporal displacement. Anna Erickson volunteered for a 4-month isolation study. She doesn't know that we're extending the study indefinitely. You've been wiping her memory for 30 years. The temporal loop does that naturally. We just don't rescue her when the window opens every 127 days. The island's temporal properties reset her consciousness, but maintain her physical form. It's invaluable research into the nature of human identity and memory. Dr. Martinez stared at him in horror. She's been trapped for 30 years, living the same 4 months over and over with no knowledge of what's happening to her. The transmission from Anna continued. I know you probably think this is necessary. I know you're probably learning important things about consciousness and time and memory, but I'm not just a test subject. I'm a human being, and I have a right to my own life, my own experiences, my own memories. Please help me remember. Please help me escape. Dr. Martinez grabbed the emergency phone and began dialing the Antarctic Research Ethics Board. The Bouvet experiment was about to become the biggest scandal in the history of temporal research. But on Bouvet Island, Anna Erickson began day 1 of Loop 90, with no knowledge that her desperate message had been received, that help was coming, or that for the first time in 30 years, this might be the last time she would have to forget who she was. She made her morning observations, checked her equipment, and settled in for what she believed was the beginning of a routine 4-month assignment. She had no idea that in 127 days she would either be free or beginning her 91st loop through the same temporal prison. On day 73 of Loop 90, Anna found something she had never found before. A satellite phone that wasn't part of her regular equipment, hidden beneath a false floor panel in the communications room. The phone was already connected to an active call. Anna, can you hear me? This is Dr. Sarah Martinez from the Temporal Research Division. Anna picked up the phone cautiously. How do you know my name? How did you get this frequency? Anna, listen to me very carefully. You sent us a message 26 days ago. You exposed our research project. We're coming to get you. What research project? I'm just here to maintain the weather station. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Anna, how long do you think you've been on Bouvet Island? 73 days. Why? You've been there for 30 years. You're trapped in a temporal loop that resets your memory every 127 days. Our organization has been studying your responses to temporal displacement, but your last transmission broke protocol. The ethics board has ordered your immediate extraction. Anna sank into a chair, feeling reality shift around her. That's impossible. I'm 32 years old. I arrived here 2.5 months ago. Anna, check your journal. Look at the dates. Look at the handwriting variations. You've been writing the same entries for 3 decades. With hands that shook, Anna opened her journal and flipped through the pages. Day 72. Day 71. Day 70. All the way back to day 1. But as Dr. Martinez had said, the handwriting changed subtly throughout, sometimes neater, sometimes more hurried, sometimes showing signs of stress or desperation that Anna didn't remember feeling. This doesn't make sense, Anna whispered. The temporal loop preserves your physical form, but resets your consciousness every 127 days. You wake up on day 1 with no memory of previous iterations. But in loop 89, you found a way to maintain consciousness through the reset. You discovered our monitoring equipment, and you sent a message exposing the experiment. Anna walked to the window and stared out at the Antarctic landscape that suddenly felt less like a research assignment and more like a prison. You've been watching me for 30 years. Yes, I'm sorry, Anna. The project was classified at the highest levels. The temporal research possibilities were considered too valuable to abandon. But what we've done to you, it's not ethical, it's not legal. And now that you've exposed us, we're shutting down the experiment. How? A temporal extraction team is being deployed to Bouvet Island. They'll arrive on day 126, 3 days from now. But Anna, there's something else you need to know. The loop reset isn't just automatic. There's a manual trigger. If we can't extract you safely, if something goes wrong with the rescue, they're authorized to reset the loop manually to protect the classified nature of the research. Anna felt ice form in her stomach. They'll erase my memory again. Only if the extraction fails. That's why it's crucial that you cooperate with the rescue team. Don't try to escape on your own. Don't attempt to leave the island before they arrive. Any deviation from your normal routine could trigger security protocols. What about all the other Annas? The ones who lived through this before me? Are they dead? They're all you, Anna. The same consciousness, reset and repeated. Every loop, you live the same life with the same personality, but without memory of the previous iterations. In a sense, this is your 90th life, but it's also your first life, repeated 90 times. Anna closed her eyes and tried to process the enormity of what she was learning. 30 years of stolen time, 30 years of the same 4 months, lived over and over without her knowledge or consent. 89 previous versions of herself who had lived and died without ever knowing the truth. Dr. Martinez, she said finally, when the rescue team comes, will I remember this conversation? Will I remember what you've told me? If the extraction succeeds, yes. We'll use temporal stabilization technology to preserve your memories from this loop. You'll remember everything, not just this conversation, but all 90 iterations. You'll get your 30 years back, Anna, all of it. And if the extraction fails, then you wake up on day 1 of loop 91 and we start over. But Anna, that's not going to happen. We're not going to let them reset you again. Anna looked at her watch. Day 73. 3 more days until the rescue team arrived. 3 more days to maintain her routine, to avoid triggering any security protocols, to hope that 30 years of temporal imprisonment was finally coming to an end. "Dr. Martinez," she said, "thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for being strong enough to expose us, Anna. What we did to you was wrong, but your message, your courage in that moment when you broke through the memory wipe, it's going to save you, and it's going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Anna hung up the phone and walked back to her journal. She had 3 days to wait, 3 days to live normally while knowing that nothing about her situation was normal. She began to write. Day 73. I learned today that I have lived this day 89 times before. Tomorrow, I will live day 74 for the 90th time. In 3 days, people are coming to take me home. I don't remember home, but I want to see it again. Outside, the Antarctic wind howled across Bouvet Island, and for the first time in 30 years, Anna Eriksson allowed herself to hope that this might be the last time she would have to hear that sound. Day 126 arrived with a storm that was different from all the previous storms Anna had experienced in her 90 iterations through the same 4 months. This storm felt final, apocalyptic, as if the island itself knew that the temporal loop was about to be broken. Anna stood in the communications room, watching the horizon for signs of the rescue team that Dr. Martinez had promised. According to their conversation 3 days ago, the extraction team should arrive today with technology capable of breaking the temporal loop and preserving her consciousness through the transition back to normal time. But as the hours passed, Anna began to suspect that something had gone wrong. At 3:00 p.m., the satellite phone rang. "Anna, this is Dr. Martinez. We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The extraction team's helicopter went down in the storm. They're alive, but they can't reach the island. We're going to have to attempt a remote extraction." Anna felt her heart sink. What does that mean? "We're going to try to break the temporal loop from our monitoring station using directed temporal field manipulation." "But Anna, the process is dangerous. There's a chance it could destabilize your consciousness permanently." "What's the alternative?" "The project directors are pushing for a manual reset. They want to wipe your memory again and continue the experiment with enhanced security protocols. They're claiming that your exposure of the project has compromised national security." Anna gripped the phone tighter. "How long do I have?" "The reset window opens at 11:47 p.m. If we can't complete the remote extraction before then, they'll trigger the memory wipe and you'll wake up tomorrow as Loop 91 with no knowledge of any of this." Anna looked at her watch. 3:17 p.m. 8.5 hours. "What do I need to do?" "There's a temporal field generator in the underground chamber beneath your station. Previous versions of yourself built it over multiple loops. You need to activate it at exactly 11:46 p.m. and synchronize it with our field manipulation from the monitoring station." Anna made her way to the underground chamber that she had discovered on day 127 of Loop 89. The space was filled with equipment that spanned decades of technological development, all left by previous versions of herself who had tried and failed to escape the temporal loop. She found the temporal field generator a device cobbled together from station equipment and components that previous Annas had somehow acquired. According to the notes left by Anna 88, the device would create a localized temporal stability field that could protect her consciousness during the loop break attempt. But the warnings attached to the device were ominous, untested, potentially lethal, use only as last resort. Anna spent the next several hours preparing for the extraction attempt, following procedures that previous versions of herself had developed through trial and error across multiple loops. She felt a strange kinship with these other Annas, different iterations of herself, who had fought the same battle against temporal imprisonment. At 11:30 p.m., Dr. Martinez called one final time. "Anna, are you ready? As ready as I can be for something like this. Remember, activate the field generator at exactly 11:46. We'll begin the remote extraction at 11:46:30. You'll feel disorientation, possibly pain, but whatever happens, don't turn off the generator until the process is complete." "Dr. Martinez," Anna said, "if this doesn't work, if I wake up tomorrow in loop 91 with no memory of this conversation, will you try again?" "Yes, we'll keep trying until we get you out, Anna. I promise." Anna positioned herself next to the temporal field generator and watched the clock tick toward 11:46. Around her, the underground chamber hummed with energy from equipment that existed outside the normal flow of time on Bouvet Island. At 11:45, she could feel the island beginning to prepare for the temporal reset. The air grew thick, and reality seemed to become more fragile, as if the universe was getting ready to fold back on itself. At 11:46 p.m., Anna activated the temporal field generator. The world exploded into impossible sensations. Anna felt herself stretched across time, experiencing all 90 loops simultaneously. She was arriving on the island for the first time and the 90th time. She was discovering the truth about the temporal loop and forgetting it again. She was young and old, hopeful and desperate, naive and experienced. But this time, instead of fragmenting into forgetfulness, her consciousness held together. The temporal field generator created a pocket of stability around her awareness, allowing her to remain whole as the loop tried to reset around her. She felt the remote extraction begin. Dr. Martinez and her team reaching across space and time to pull Anna's consciousness out of the temporal trap. It felt like being born, like breaking through the surface of water after nearly drowning, like waking up from a dream that had lasted 30 years. And then, suddenly, it was over. Anna found herself standing in the underground chamber, but something was fundamentally different. The air felt lighter. Time felt linear again. The oppressive sense of repetition that had hung over Bouvet Island was gone. The satellite phone rang. Anna, did it work?" Anna picked up the phone with hands that felt like they belonged to her for the first time in 30 years. "Dr. Martinez, I think I'm free. Do you remember? Do you remember all the loops?" Anna closed her eyes and felt the weight of 90 lifetimes of memory settling into her consciousness. She remembered every version of herself, every failed escape attempt, every discovery, and every forgetting. She remembered 30 years of stolen time. "I remember everything," she said. "The extraction team will reach you tomorrow. The storm is clearing. You're going home, Anna." Anna walked up from the underground chamber into the weather station that had been her prison for 30 years. She looked out at the Antarctic landscape of Bouvet Island, but instead of feeling trapped, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 decades. The passage of time, real time, linear time, time that moved forward instead of circling back on itself. she was free. But as she prepared for her rescue and her return to a world that had aged 30 years while she remained 32, Anna couldn't help but think about the other test subjects who might be trapped in temporal loops on other remote islands, in other classified research facilities, living the same days over and over without knowing that they were prisoners in experiments they never agreed to participate in. Her freedom was just the beginning. Now she had to make sure that what happened to her never happened to anyone else. Anna Eriksson, survivor of 90 temporal loops, sat down to write her final journal entry on Bouvet Island. Day 127, loop 90, final entry. I remember everything now, all of it. 30 years of stolen time. But I'm free, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what the Temporal Research Division did to me. This is Anna Eriksson, signing off from Bouvet Island for the last time. I'm going home. Outside, the Antarctic wind still howled, but it no longer sounded like a prison. It sounded like freedom.